What's up, fam? Hope everybody's doing fantastic out there today. We are taking a look at the latest and greatest from Vosteed. You guys know the big box means a premium knife, super premium. This comes in the nice orange case here. Let's get that back out of the way. Now, this is the new Vosteed Raccoon, and so this is their 3rd anniversary. So with the knife, you do get a pretty cool challenge coin. It's their 3rd anniversary stuff there. And then the knife does also come with a COA. So they are numbered. There's 250 of them. And I apologize, I still don't know if it's 250 total or 250 per variant. But here we have number 155. And definitely by far the most premium of the raccoons we have seen thus far. Using M390 and titanium. Milled titanium at that. So there's 2 different options in milling pattern. We'll talk about that here in just a moment. But yeah, a pretty stellar blade. But some specs on the thing, you're looking at a 3.22 inch blade that is 3.5 mil thick. And then the handle is 4.36 inches, and it is just over half an inch thick at 0.52. 7.59 inches overall, so this thing is in that perfect sweet spot for me as far as overall length is concerned, and 4.64 ounces, so not too shabby there. Now the M390 is actually done very, very well on these knives. Vosteed has kind of fine-tuned their heat treatment on M390, so looking at 61 to 63 HRC on these, so 62 plus or minus 1, which is a really nice heat treat again for M390. Like I said, there are 4 total versions of the knife. So you have the blue here with the satin blade, and then there is also a all gray with a blue button that has a stonewash blade, and that one is the other diamond texture, so that's what they're calling this here, the diamond texturing. And then there are 2 of the milled or micro milled versions. I have kind of the diagonal milling there. We'll show you pictures here. But there is the all gray with the satin blade, so no, I mean, it's just straight gray and satin, no accents or anything like that. And then there is my other personal favorite. So if I wouldn't have gotten this one, I would have gotten the black one. So it's a black blade. It's a stonewash blade with the kind of the dark gray titanium, and then all the bronze or brown accents. Really, really cool looking knife. Kind of harkens to their the Copper Dunes version of the knives that they've been doing here as of late. Now, these knives are dropping on the 15th, so as I'm recording that, it is tomorrow, but 7 a.m. set on the 15th, so 8/15/2025 at 7 a.m. They are doing the final drop of these, so just be on the lookout for that. $250 on the price tag. So not too shabby in my opinion. The latest edition of the Vosteed, so really, honestly, I think this is probably my favorite one so far. Now, again, I will say this is the only Vosteed I've had that is not a coated blade, so I don't know if that is, has anything to do with why the action is so much better on this one than some previous ones. Typically, I have to kind of break in my knives a little bit with the Vosteed to get the action really dialed in, but this one was pretty sweet right out of the box, like I said. Let's go ahead and jump in to the close-ups here so we can see this thing in all its glory. Now, I will say this texturing was a kind of a surprise. I almost did not get this variant just because I'm not the biggest fan of the diamond texturing, but on here they've done this so well. I've actually been really impressed. I have carried the knife the last 2 days just to make sure that it's that I was prepared to do this video this morning. I carried it last night as well. Pulled it right out of my pocket here, but this texturing, I don't want to say smooth, but it's smooth. It's not rough at all. It has texture to give you grip, but it kind of reminds me of, almost kind of reminds me of a really nice G10, how it has some kind of grip to it. It really reminds me of that and that kind of texture, but not rough at all. It's honestly quite amazing. So I am definitely interested in how the milling one, the other pattern looks as well. I may try to swing another one and get that other version. We'll see. But titanium on your button, I believe it is titanium thumb studs as well. And then you have your, of course, the titanium scales here. Go ahead and come through. Now, we do have a reversible pocket clip with a filler tab. Bravo, Vosteed, they have listened. They are doing things, making changes. So they do have the filler tab here on this premium knife. And then you do have a lanyard hole there. A nice titanium backspacer with a little bit of milling in there to give it a little pop. T8 hardware, it looks like, on everything. Really nice pocket clip. So I like how the pocket clip looks in general. I like the little stylized swoops in here. I think that's a good look, but I have been really impressed with how well the pocket clip works. This thing, it's in and out of the pocket easily, but it has enough retention to where it stays when you want it to. I really have zero issues with how the pocket clip works. Then you have your banker lock adjuster here. So this is not only how you disassemble the knife, but these are also, you consider these your pivot screws. So you make adjustments to these two screws as equally as you can to adjust your pivot tension. So just like you would with a standard pivot screw. And that's easily done there. Let's go ahead and take a look at the blade itself. So standard machine satin on the blade. I would love to see Vosteed venture into kind of doing more of a belt satin. Now their machine satin does look really nice. I mean, it is a good look, but I think on a knife like this, the one thing personally that does let it down slightly is not having that really nice machine or really nice belt satin that we're typically seeing in knives of this caliber. But again, that being said, like I said, it is a nice finish for what it is. Swedged drop point, kind of typical from your Raccoon. We do have a little bit of a change up here and the milling on the blade and bringing in this jimping. So that's actually a pretty smart thing there. And I don't know if this was intentional, but knowing UA, it probably was because he is a pretty smart guy. But when you're dealing with a blade that's a little bit thicker, if you narrow it down right there where that jimping is, that actually makes that jimping slightly more effective because it's less surface area and it actually kind of digs into your thumb a little bit better. Now, that being said, the jimping, if it was sharper jimping, I don't think that would have been as much of a need, but it is kind of rounded off jimping, but because of that kind of pinch point there, it does still work fairly well. It's not the best jimping I've ever handled, but it does work fairly well. The front flipper jimping kind of disappears. It doesn't really set in. It sets in too far for it to really be useful. So that jimping you're going to be, when you're choked up here, that's where you're going to get that jimping at right there. Now the blade itself, like I said, we got just simple branding. You got the Vosteed branding on one side. This side you have your serial number 155 of 250, and then the blade steel. Plunge grind is pretty typical for the finger-choiled Vosteed, so it does end right before the edge termination, but not too far. So you do have some sharpening room, but not a ton. The knife itself it's razor sharp. Sharpening out of the box looks pretty doggone good. Don't see any major defects or anything like that in the sharpening. It is perfectly centered, and we'll take a look at that tip. The tip, it looks like, yeah, the tip looks like it is slightly off towards the show side. You guys can see that. Let's see if we can see that in the tip itself. Let's see here. Yeah, so you can see there it does have, on the clip side here, it does have a really nice clean grind that goes all the way to the tip there without any issues. But then right here, right at that tip, it does kind of, looks like that grind didn't quite get as deep there on that on the show side. So not a major issue. Now we can see the lockup mechanism there. So that is the Vanker lock in its greatness. Let me see. I think I have a flashlight somewhere. Here it is. I'll get you guys some light on the subject. Let's see. Do we have? That's gonna be. Is that gonna be bright enough? No, we need to go up a little bit more. So sorry, that's gonna be a little bit too bright. But in here you can see the laser etching, the 3rd anniversary, and there is the raccoon poking its eyes out there. Really cool. We'll show that here more in depth in just a second. But there is your lockup. So that, with the Vanker lock, you have that solid steel chunk that locks into the back of the blade right here. Works really well. It's a very strong lock. So you get a real detent. It's not, folks think that, might think that it's just a standard button lock if you've never messed with a Vosteed or never messed with the Vanker lock. So it is not a button lock. It's really not even the same as some of the other pivot locks that you see. Like you've got the Remet pivot lock, which is basically a liner lock. And then you have the ones that the OEM Sikio does, which is like the Truffles and the Orion Aries. Those use a very similar lock. They're not exactly the same, but they are very similar. And it's more of a kind of a wedge style lock that comes in from the opposite side of the blade, and it functions more like a liner lock or like a compression lock. Yeah, a fantastic knife. If you guys have handled a Raccoon, you know how this knife feels. Now with the titanium upgrade, you do get a little bit more weight, which is nice. It kind of gives it a more substantial feel in the hand. The texturing, like I said, is good. No issues there. Chamfers are nice. It is non-contoured. That's another thing I kind of wish we would have got, is just a little bit of contouring maybe. But again, that's just extreme nitpicks. So, like I said, maybe a little bit sharper jimping and maybe a little bit of contouring would have just kind of made this thing an 11 out of 10. I really do think it's a home run anyway. But, those things would have just really sent it over the edge. Let's go ahead and take a look at our hardware really quickly just to see how the hardware is done. So I do believe we are T8 hardware. Yeah, so we have T8 hardware here. And I'm not getting any wiggles on any of that. And then T6 hardware here on these little screws. Yeah, no issues there. Now I'm going to go ahead and go into the size comparisons really quickly. And then last thing we'll do is I'm actually going to take the knife apart so you guys can check that out. So the folks that are not interested in that, they can get on with their day and not have to worry about it. But the folks that do want to see the knife disassembled, then you can certainly hang on and we'll get that done really quickly. Here we are with the Penguin and the Pyrite. So you guys can see, I believe the standard Raccoon, if I'm not mistaken, is pretty much the identical size of these two, are very, very, very close. So I do think the Raccoon V is slightly larger than the standard. Editor Brian will put that in and let you guys know for sure. Here we are with the drop bear. And then we have the Militol. Try to get that lined up as best I can. And then another really great knife, kind of in that same size factor, just a little bit smaller. Bel Air, as per usual. Next up is the Malibu. And then the PM2. And last but not least, the MSI. So of course, PM2 and MSI are the only ones that are going to be larger. And I believe the Militol was pretty much the same size, or right there at it. Yeah, let's go ahead and just really quickly go through the teardown process on the knife. So I am going to zoom in just ever so slightly so you guys can see a little better of what I'm doing here. I am going to go ahead and pull our T8s. So it is steel hardware, so not titanium hardware, which I honestly prefer. I don't really care if my knife has titanium hardware. I mean, yeah, it's cool for anodizing purposes and whatnot, but not really something that concerns me. I don't believe I need to remove the pocket clip screws there. So lastly, we'll need to do is just remove our two Vanker screws here. Like I said, these are the only T6s on the knife. And these are factory Loctited. Luckily, they don't do a ton of Loctite. Vosteed has done pretty well with that here as of late. Just kind of wiggle it a little bit. Might need to get in here with my little spudger tool. Okay. So it is a magnet here, so it does kind of hold things together sometimes. Hopefully get it right now. Get in here. I mean, fast forward the part, that's just caught up on the pin there. There we go. So there is your 3rd anniversary lasering, which is really cool. And then on the inside here, you have your bearing race and everything, along with the Vanker lock stuff. Let's go ahead and just set that right here. And then here you have your large bearings, and then you have your slots where the button goes through and pushes on your leaf spring. Set this to where you guys can see it. So here's your leaf spring. So this is where your button presses. So the button is actually magnetic, which allows the button to be, to not flop around. You have the large bearings here that run inside on the blade, and then you have your locking tab there. So that really helps with security. So you have this very large nub here, this stainless steel or this solid steel nub with the detent ball there. That is your lock. So that actually locks in to that spot on the blade right there. So it's a really interesting lock, and it works very, very well. It is adjustable. So if, just like with anything else, if you want a lighter or a stiffer detent, you can adjust it like you would a normal frame lock or a liner lock. It is, however, tougher because this is harder to make slight changes or make small bends in, so just be aware of that. Personally, I haven't had any problems with detents from these knives out of the factory, but just be aware of that. But it is cool to see that lasering there on the lock bar, just another added little touch from the folks at Vosteed. Now I am going to see, yeah, I'm about to say that should pop out. So that was just had a little bit of grease in there that was keeping that in. So I am going to actually, work the knife with that out so you guys can see how it works and how the how everything goes. So you see this just sets in there, and it's already just kind of trying to magnetize, or it's just magnet sucking itself back in there. So now we just got to wiggle everything back on, get it all back where it needs to be. Get everything lined up. Go ahead and take our T8s. Get my T8s put back in here. Just double check. I want to make sure I ain't using. I'm pretty sure these screws are the same. Yeah, they are. So the screws are the same. The body screws are the same. Make sure they were the same length. Just go through and double check all my screws. I always like to make sure my hardware is nice and tight. Alright, so now we can actually see this locking mechanism click into place. You can see, try to get to where you guys can see that. You can see how that moves out of the way. Voila. So I'll go ahead and put this knife back together and retune it after the video. Actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and do that now, because you do have to tune it somewhat with the screws here on the stop pin, just like you would with a Spyderco. If you guys are familiar with tuning a PM2, actually I think most Spydercos are this way. You do kind of have to tune them with that stop pin screw. So let's get that in there, that lined up, and then we will go ahead and add our screws back in. So the plate here, it is not multi-directional, so it does only go in one way. So if you have it and it looks like it's close but you can't get the screws to go in, just spin it around 180 and you will you'll be good. That'll bring it back to where it needs to be. So just be aware of that. And then like I said, I always just try to put the screws in a little bit at a time. I bottom them out just like I would with a normal pivot. And then I will turn them back about a half a turn. Alright, so let's see. Let's try just a little bit further. I don't want to go too far. Okay, so this is where I will tune with the stop pin screw. So I'm just going to undo my stop pin screw by just like a little eighth of a turn. Just get it right off the tight. And there you go. Maybe just a hair more. Let's see. There we go. Back to the way it was before I took it apart. I didn't even put any extra oil or anything in there. These things are usually pretty well lubricated from the factory. So, alright guys, well that is all I've got for you on today's video. Huge congrats to Vosteed and celebrating 3 years. Yeah, I have been a fan of them since the very beginning, and yeah, I'm going to continue to be. I consider you a personal friend of mine, Fira as well, and May, and all the folks that I've had dealings with there at Vosteed. I do consider them friends, and I look forward to seeing them every year, multiple times a year, if at all possible. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about this down in the comments below. Hopefully I am the first that you've seen of this. If you are new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I really appreciate it. As always, I appreciate each and every one of y'all. Please remember to be kind, be humble, and be EDC. Take care.